The night was cold, and the forest felt alive with whispers. The human, a stranded explorer named Daniel, crouched low behind the remains of a fallen tree. His breath came fast, his heart beating like a drum in his chest. The air smelled of wet earth and strange plants that glowed faintly in the dark. He had been on this alien world for only 3 days, and already he knew one truth: he was not alone. Somewhere out there, something massive walked through the woods. He had seen its shadow once, tall as a building, moving between the trees. Its steps made the ground tremble, and its voice, deep and strange, rolled through the forest like distant thunder. Daniel gripped the broken piece of metal he had turned into a crude blade. It would not help much against something that big, but holding it made him feel less helpless. He was human, and humans fought to the end. Then the sound came again. Thum, thum, heavy footsteps. Slow, measured, each one closer than the last. The forest grew quiet, as if every smaller creature knew what was coming and had decided to hide. Daniel's mouth went dry. His mind painted a terrifying picture: an alien giantess, tall enough to crush him with one hand, hungry for meat. His meat. He had read about predators on other worlds, but this was worse. This was not a beast. This was something intelligent. Something watching him. The footsteps stopped. Daniel froze. The silence pressed in around him. He slowly looked up, and his stomach turned to ice. She was there. A towering figure stood in the moonlight, her outline clear against the glowing plants. She was enormously 3 times his height, maybe more. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer, her long hair flowing like silver threads. Her eyes glowed faintly blue, wide and focused directly on him. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but his body refused to move. His mind told him one thing: predator. Her lips parted, and a low sound escaped, something between a hum and a growl. His heart nearly stopped. She was speaking to him, but he did not understand. He gripped his blade tighter and shouted, his voice trembling, "Stay back, don't come closer." She tilted her head, curious. Then she took one slow step forward. The ground shook. Daniel stumbled back, panic rising in his chest. His breath came fast, and his mind filled with images of her reaching down, grabbing him, tearing him apart like prey. Another step. Her eyes never left him. They were not the eyes of a mindless animal. They were sharp, aware, almost gentle. But Daniel could not see that. All he saw was death. "Don't," he shouted again, raising his blade high. "I'll fight you." To his surprise, she stopped. The giantess lowered her head slightly, as if studying him. Then she crouched down, her massive frame folding with slow grace. She rested her hand on the ground, palm open, showing she carried no weapon. Daniel's chest heaved. Sweat ran down his forehead. Why wasn't she attacking? Why wasn't she ending this? She made another sound, softer this time, almost like a question. He blinked, confusion mixing with fear. Did she want something? Did she understand him? But then his fear spoke louder than reason. He imagined her teeth, her hunger. He whispered under his breath, "She wants to eat me." The giantess slowly moved her hand closer, her palm still open. Daniel stumbled back, tripping over a root. His blade clattered to the ground. He cursed under his breath and grabbed it again, pointing it up at her like a tiny dagger against a mountain. She paused. Her glowing eyes softened, and a strange expression crossed her face. Not hunger, not anger. Something else, but Daniel could not read it. All he saw was a giant shadow looming over him, and his every instinct screamed one word. The trees whispered in the wind. The moonlight glowed on her silver hair, and Daniel realized with cold dread that there was no running. She was faster, stronger, If she wanted his flesh, she would take it. So he stood, blade shaking in his hand, staring up at the alien giantess, who seemed to study him like a puzzle, and for the first time, he wondered if this was not the end, but the beginning of something he could not yet understand. Asterisk. First contact. Daniel did not move. His arms shook as he held the broken blade in front of him, a useless toy against a creature so large. The giantess did not attack. She only crouched there, her glowing eyes fixed on him as if waiting. The silence between them stretched, thick and heavy. Daniel's heartbeat echoed in his ears. He wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but his body felt trapped, frozen between fight and flight. Finally, the giantess moved, but not in the way he expected. Slowly, carefully, she lowered her hand flat against the ground, palm open as though offering something unseen. Her long fingers pressed lightly into the soil, and her massive frame leaned forward with a strange gentleness. Daniel flinched. He thought she was about to grab him, but her hand stayed where it was, motionless, open. He stared at it, confusion cutting through his fear. Why wasn't she attacking? Why wasn't she tearing him apart like every instinct in his mind screamed she should? The giantess made a sound again, low, soft, like a note of music. Her lips moved, forming words Daniel could not understand. The sound was not a growl, not a rut, was calm, almost soothing. Daniel's mouth was dry. "What do you want?" he whispered, though he knew she couldn't understand him either. She tilted her head, as if studying him, and then spoke again, longer this time. Her voice rolled like thunder wrapped in silk, deep yet strangely soft. Daniel gritted his teeth. "She's toying with me, trying to calm me before she eats me." The thought sent another surge of fear through him. He stumbled back a step, clutching the blade tighter. His eyes darted to the trees, searching for escape. But he knew it was hopeless. She was too fast, too strong. If she wanted him, there was nowhere to go. The giantess blinked slowly, then moved in a way that startled him. She reached to her side and pulled something from a pouch attached to her belt. For a moment, Daniel thought it was a weapon. He raised the blade in panic, but she did not attack. Instead, she sat down. Food. Daniel's eyes widened. On the ground between them lay what looked like fruit large, round, glowing faintly from within. She pushed it gently forward with one fingertip, sliding it closer to him. Daniel froze, his stomach twisted. He hadn't eaten since the morning before, and hunger gnawed at him like a knife. The smell of the fruit was sweet, almost intoxicating, but his fear screamed louder than his hunger. "It's bait. She's luring me in. She grabbed me the second I touch." The giantess spoke again, her tone softer than before. She tapped the fruit lightly, then pushed it closer, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. Daniel's heart pounded. He glanced from the fruit to her enormous face, to the forest around them. Every instinct told him this was wrong. Predators didn't feed their prey. Predators hunted, killed, devoured, and yet, here she was, offering him food. Minutes passed. The fruit sat untouched in the dirt, glowing softly under the alien moonlight. Daniel's blade shook in his hand. His hunger clawed at his resolve. Finally, he stepped forward. Just one step. The giantess did not move. Another step. Still, she stayed perfectly still, watching Daniel crouched, his eyes never leaving hers, and grabbed the fruit. His fingers trembled as he brought it close. The sweet scent was stronger now, making his mouth water. He hesitated for only a moment before biting into it. The taste exploded in his mouth. Sweet, juicy, refreshing. His body, starved of energy, surged with relief. He devoured the fruit quickly, the juice dripping down his chin. When it was gone, he wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked up. The giantess was still there, watching him with that same unreadable expression. Daniel's breath caught. Her eyes weren't hungry. They weren't cruel. They were warm, curious, almost kind. He shook his head violently. No, no, don't fall for it. She's waiting, until I let my guard down. But deep down, something inside him whispered otherwise. Something told him this was not the gaze of a predator. The night stretched on. Daniel returned to his makeshift shelter beneath the trees, his blade close at hand. But sleep did not come easily. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, the glowing eyes, the silver hair, the gentle hand offering food. He told himself. It was a trick, a predator's game. Yet the warmth in her gaze haunted him. By morning, his decision was clear. He could not ignore her. He needed to know what she wanted. The next day, he found her waiting. The giantess stood near the edge of the clearing, her massive frame casting a long shadow. She saw him and lowered herself again, crouching slowly so as not to frighten him. Daniel's throat tightened, but this time he did not run. She spoke again, her voice a melody of strange sounds. She gestured to herself, touching her chest with one hand, then pointing gently toward him. Daniel frowned. Was she trying to introduce herself? He hesitated, then mimicked her motion. He touched his chest and said, Daniel. The giantess tilted her head, her lips parting as she repeated something close to his sound. Da-nel. His heart skipped a beat. She was trying to speak his name. For the first time, a spark of something other than fear stirred inside him. Curiosity. The hours that followed were strange and surreal. She brought him more food, always careful to set it down before retreating a little. He dared to eat again, though his nerves never fully settled at one point. She drew shapes in the dirt with her fingertip symbols, images Daniel realized. She was trying to communicate. He tried to, drawing a crude picture of a stick figure human. She leaned in, studying it with interest, then drew something larger, her own towering form. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, Daniel forgot his fear, but then reality crashed back in. She was still enormous, still alien, still a predator in his eyes. And yet, why had she not harmed him? Why did she look at him not as prey, but as something else entirely? Daniel's chest tightened. He did not have the answer. Not yet. But he knew one thing. This was no ordinary encounter. And whatever the giantess wanted, it was not his flesh. The misunderstanding the next few days were a blur of confusion for Daniel. Each morning, when the alien sun rose over the forest, he found her waiting at the edges of his camp. Always silent at first, always careful. She crouched in the same position, lowering herself until she seemed smaller, less threatening, her hands open, palms to the earth, and always she left food. Strange fruits that glowed faintly, roots that tasted bitter but filled his stomach. Sometimes even small creatures, neatly killed, left in front of him like offerings. Daniel ate them because he had no choice. Hunger was stronger than fear, but every bite felt like a trap, a chain tightening around his throat. Why is she feeding me? He thought again and again. What predator fattens its prey before the kill? The question haunted him. One afternoon, Daniel decided he would test her. He had sharpened his blade with a stone until it could at least cut through thick plant fibers. It was still nothing against her, but it was all he had. His plan was simple. Wait until she came close again, then strike not. To kill, because he knew he couldn't, but to wound. To see what she would do if she was truly a predator. She would reveal it the moment blood was spilled. That evening, the giantess appeared as she always did. She She carried food in her hands, 2 glowing fruits, and set them gently on the ground. Her glowing eyes met his, soft and calm, like the sky before rain. Daniel's breath quickened. He stepped forward slowly, pretending to reach for the fruit. She watched him with curiosity, her massive frame still, her long silver hair falling over her shoulders. Then, with a shout, he lunged. The blade slashed across her finger. Blood welled up, bright and strange, glowing faintly blue under the alien sky. The giantess gasped a sound so human it shocked him, but she did not strike back. She did not roar or crush him beneath her massive hand. Instead, she pulled her hand back quickly, clutching the small wound as if confused. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, Daniel saw hurt not from the cut, but something deeper. She spoke, her voice sharp with surprise, a string of sounds that meant nothing to him but carried tone, emotion. She was not angry. She sounded wounded. Betrayed, Daniel's chest tightened, his blade still raised. "What are you waiting for?" he shouted, his voice breaking. "Why don't you kill me?" She stared at him. Her lips trembled as though she wanted to speak more, but no words came. Then, slowly, she set her other hand down on the ground again, palm open, showing she carried no weapon. Her bleeding finger rested on her leg, glowing softly in the dim light. Daniel's heart raced. He did not understand. Why wasn't she fighting back? Why wasn't she punishing him for the attack? Instead, she only looked at him with those strange, glowing eyes, sad now, heavy with something he couldn't name. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He sat by the small fire he had built, the flames flickering across his face. The image of her eyes burned in his mind. He had cut her. He had attacked her. And yet, she had not retaliated. She could have ended him in seconds. One swipe of her massive hand, and he would be gone. But she hadn't. Instead, she had looked. Disappointed, the thought gnawed at him like hunger. Why? Why does she keep sparing me? The following morning, he half expected she would not return, that his attack had ended whatever strange game she was playing. But when the sun rose, she was there. She crouched in the same place, though now her injured finger was wrapped in some kind of cloth. She placed food on the ground, again more fruit, fresh and bright. Daniel stared at it, guilt twisting inside him. She should hate him. She should see him as dangerous now. And yet, she was still offering him food. Slowly, he approached. The blade hung at his side, heavy in his hand. When he picked up the fruit, she made a sound soft, careful. She pointed to herself, tapping her chest with her good hand. He remembered what she had done days ago when she seemed to be giving her name. Again, she tapped her chest and spoke. Shah. Daniel froze, his breath caught. Was that her name? She pointed at him then, tilting her head in question. His voice came out rough. Daniel, her lips moved. Nell. The sound of his name from her lips made his skin prickle. Not with fear this time, but something else. Something he could not name. But still, his mistrust remained. Later that day, when she left the clearing, Daniel followed her in secret. He stayed far back, hiding behind trees and rocks as her massive figure moved gracefully through the forest. He expected to see her hunting, devouring some creature with those strong hands and sharp teeth. But what he saw instead only deepened the mystery. She walked slowly, stopping to gather fruits and roots. She hummed softly, her voice low and melodic, like a lullaby carried on the wind. At one point, she knelt by a stream, dipping her bleeding finger in the water, cleaning it gently. And then, to his shock, she released a small animal she had caught. Earlier alive and unharmed. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. If she was a predator, why spare something so small? Why spare him? When she returned to the clearing, she found him standing there, waiting. Her glowing eyes widened slightly, as if surprised to see him. She crouched again, careful, gentle. Daniel swallowed hard. His voice shook. Why? Why don't you hurt me? Why don't you kill me? Of course, she did not understand the words. Quar, she must have understood the tone. The frustration in his voice. She touched her chest again, her lips forming the sound. Shara. Then with her good hand, she touched her chest again, then pointed gently at him. Her eyes softened. Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of her name Sharonde. Of the way she had spoken his own, he still did not trust her. Fear still burned inside him like a fire. But now, something else stirred alongside it. Doubt, maybe she was not a predator after all. Maybe she wanted something entirely different. That night, as he lay under the stars, Daniel whispered her name. For the first time, Shara, the sound felt strange on his tongue. Strange, but not unpleasant. And for the first time since he had landed on this alien world, he wondered if survival meant more than just fighting to live. Maybe survival meant understanding. The reveal of her intentions, the days blurred into a strange rhythm. Every morning, Daniel expected to wake alone, half believing that Shara would grow bored and leave him behind. Yet each day, when the alien sun rose above the trees, her massive shadow returned to the edge of the clearing. She never forced herself upon him, never tried to enter his shelter. She only waited, calm, silent, patient. Daniel ate the food she offered, though always with suspicion. His blade never left his side. But with each bite of glowing fruit, with each cautious glance upward into her strange, gentle eyes, his certainty began to crack. Still, the fear lingered. He could not erase it. She was a giantess, a being so powerful that one careless step could end him. No matter how soft her voice sounded, no matter how carefully she moved. Part of him always braced for the moment when her kindness would vanish and the predator beneath would strike. And yet, that moment never came. One night, Daniel lay awake by the fire. The air was thick with mist, the forest glowing faintly with its strange alien plants. He heard her nearby, not moving, only sitting. Her shape a dark silhouette against the silver light of the moons. Then, to his surprise, she began to hum. It was not a sound he recognized, not any song he had ever heard, but it was soft, low, and haunting. The melody floated through the trees like smoke, rising and falling in waves. Daniel froze, his eyes widening. This was no predator's growl. This was music, but for the first time since his crash, he felt something other than fear. He felt wonder. The giantess's voice carried sadness, longing. It was the sound of someone speaking without words, reaching out into the night. Daniel whispered to himself, "She's lonely." The thought hit him harder than any fear. What if she wasn't keeping him alive for food or for sport? What if she was keeping him alive because she had no one else? The next day, Daniel decided to test his theory. When Shara crouched near the clearing again, offering fruit, he didn't take it immediately. Instead, he pointed to himself, then to her. He placed a hand on his chest and spoke slowly. "Daniel." Then, he gestured toward her, waiting. She blinked, tilting her head. Then, in that low, melodic voice, she repeated, "Shara." The sound rolled through him like a wave. Hearing her name again, spoken with such weight, made his chest tighten. He tried something else. Using a stick, he scratched a crude drawing into the dirt, a stick figure human. Then, next to it, a larger figure to represent her. When she saw it, her eyes widened slightly. She leaned down, studying the marks, then gently drew her own shapes. Her finger carved deeper into the soil, forming what looked like a circle with lines radiating outward. A sun, perhaps. Daniel's heart beat faster. They were communicating not with words, but with symbols, with gestures. She wasn't a predator. She was trying to reach him, but even as curiosity grew, his fear never fully disappeared. That evening, while gathering wood, Daniel heard movement behind him. He spun, blade raised only to see Shara standing at a distance, watching him with that same unreadable expression. "Don't sneak up on me," he muttered, though he knew she couldn't understand. Still, she stepped back, raising her hands, slightly as if to say she meant no harm. Something about the gesture made his chest ache. She was so large, so powerful, yet she acted with the caution of someone afraid of scaring him. For a predator, she was being far too careful. The breaking point came days later. Daniel had ventured deeper into the forest, desperate to find something. Useful firewood, maybe a way to mark his path home. But as he wandered, he stumbled into a nest of alien creatures. They were small, but vicious, with sharp mandibles and chittering screams. They swarmed at him, fast and hungry. Daniel fought with his blade, slashing wildly, but there were too many. One sank its teeth into his arm, and he cried out in pain. Then the ground shook. Shara's shadow fell over him as she stormed into the clearing. Her roar split the air, deeper and louder than thunder. With one swing of her massive hand, she crushed several of the creatures at once. The rest scattered, fleeing into the forest. Daniel fell to the ground, clutching his bleeding arm, his chest heaving. Shara knelt beside him, her glowing eyes wide with concern. She reached for him, but stopped, hesitating, as if afraid he would pull away. Daniel's breath came fast. His instincts screamed at him to crawl back, to keep his distance. But he was hurt, and she had just saved his life. For the first time, he let her touch him. Her massive fingers, careful and delicate, brushed against his arm. She made a soft sound, sad, almost mournful as she examined the wound. Then, with surprising precision, she tore a strip of cloth from her own garment and wrapped it gently around his arm. Daniel stared, stunned. This was no predator's act. This was care. That night, Daniel sat by the fire, his arm bandaged in her cloth. Shara sat nearby, her massive form outlined against the stars. She spoke softly, words he could not understand, but her tone carried meaning. She wasn't threatening him. She wasn't demanding. She was talking. And as he listened, something inside him shifted. The fear was still there, but now it mingled with something else, something fragile, something dangerous. Hope. Maybe she didn't want his flesh after all. Maybe what she hungered for was something far different. From then on, Daniel began to see the signs. The way she watched him, not with hunger, but with patience. The way her voice softened when she tried to say his name. The way she always waited for him to take the first step, the first bite, the first word. Every action spoke the same truth. She wasn't trying to own him. She was trying to know him. Daniel sat by the fire one evening, staring at the flames, and whispered the words he had been too afraid to admit until now. She doesn't want to eat me. She just doesn't want to be alone. And for the first time, he let himself wonder if her hunger was not for his flesh, but for something deeper, something human, something like love. Building the Bantha forest felt different now. For weeks, Daniel had moved through it like prey, every rustle of leaves a threat, every shadow a reminder of how small he was. But since the night Shara saved him from the swarming creatures, something had changed. She was no longer only a danger in his mind. She had become something else, a guardian. Each day, their routine grew more familiar. Shara would appear at dawn, waiting near the clearing, her enormous body crouched low, her glowing eyes searching for him. She still brought food, but now Daniel no longer hesitated to take it. Sometimes they ate together, he chewing slowly on fruit while she sat silently, watching. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was comfortable. And then came the attempts at communication. It began with names, spoken clumsily but carefully. "Daniel," he said, tapping his chest. "Donnell," she repeated, her deep voice shaping the sound with surprising effort. "Shara," he answered, nodding to her. Her lips curved into something close to a smile. "Sha-Ra." The first time she smiled, Daniel's stomach turned in knots. It was small, almost uncertain, but it was real. And it wasn't the smile of a predator, it was the smile of someone trying. From there, they began to share more. Daniel used sticks and stones to draw pictures in the dirt, trees, rivers, even crude stars. Shara responded with her own drawings, far more detailed, carved deep with her fingertip. She showed him symbols that seemed like words in her language. He showed her fire, a stick figure holding flames. She showed him suns, moons, and strange patterns he couldn't yet understand. Sometimes, she laughed. The sound was low, rumbling, but warm. The first time she laughed at one of his awkward drawings, Daniel felt his fear shatter like glass. Still, the fear never vanished completely. He couldn't erase the image of her towering over him, her sheer size and strength. At night, his instincts whispered that he was still prey, fragile and weak. But by day, when she crouched beside him and listened to his voice, when she repeated his words clumsily like a child learning to speak, those whispers grew fainter. Trust came slowly, in small steps. One evening, Daniel cut his hand while sharpening his blade. The wound was shallow, but blood trickled freely. He hissed, clutching it tight. Shara noticed immediately. Her glowing eyes widened, and she leaned closer. Daniel tensed, but she moved slowly, her massive fingers hovering near his hand. Then, she tore a strip of cloth from her garment again and gently pressed it against his cut. Daniel's breath caught. The warmth of her skin, the care in her touch, it was not something he expected from a being so large, so alien. He whispered, almost without thinking, "Thank you." She tilted her head. "The NCU?" His heart skipped a beat. She had tried to repeat it. The bond deepened in ways Daniel hadn't expected. One afternoon, he found her humming again, that same haunting melody he had heard by the fire. This time, he dared to hum back, matching the rhythm clumsily. She stopped, surprised, then smiled faintly and continued, her voice harmonizing with his. Their voices together filled the forest, strange and beautiful, echoing through the trees. When the song ended, silence fell between them, but it was not awkward. It was full of something Daniel could not name. Then came the day of the hunt. Daniel had been gathering wood when he heard the growls, low, sharp, and close. He turned and saw 3 of the same creatures that had attacked him before, their mandibles clacking, their bodies crawling low to the ground. He froze, his blade clutched tight. Alone, he would not survive. But then the ground shook. Shara appeared, towering behind him, her face hard and fierce. She let out a roar so powerful it shook the leaves from the trees. The creatures shrieked, but this time they did not run. They circled. Daniel's chest tightened. They're hunting together before he could move. Shara struck her massive, hand swiping one aside, crushing it. Another leaped at her leg, its teeth sinking into her flesh. She growled in pain, kicking it away. The third lunged at Daniel. Instinct took over. He raised his blade and stabbed, the sharp edge piercing its neck. The creature screeched before collapsing. Daniel stood, panting, his hands shaking, the blade covered in strange blood. He looked up and saw Shara watching him. Not with hunger, not with pity. With pride, she touched her chest and spoke his name, strong and certain. Donnell, Daniel's throat tightened. For the first time, he believed she meant it not just as a name, but as something more, a word of respect. After that day, things changed. Daniel no longer saw himself as only a survivor. He saw himself as her partner. Together, they gathered food, built small defenses around the camp, and shared long hours in quiet company. He taught her more words: fire, water, friend. She taught him her own, though they were harder to pronounce. At night, by the fire, he began to tell her stories. He spoke of earths, of oceans, mountains, and skies filled with stars. She listened, her glowing eyes fixed on him, her expression soft. Sometimes she repeated the words back to him, clumsy but eager. He could not tell if she understood the details, but she understood him. That was enough, but with the bond came danger. Daniel knew the creatures of the forest were not the only threats. He had seen strange lights in the sky, signs that other ships, other beings, might be near. If they found him, what would they do? If they saw her with him, what would they think? At night, he worried. During the day, he pushed the thoughts aside. Because when Shara sat beside him, humming softly, her massive frame curled close to the firelight, those worries faded. He was no longer alone, and deep down, he knew she wasn't either. One night, as the fire crackled, Daniel looked at her and whispered, "You don't want my flesh, do you?" Of course, she didn't understand the words, but her glowing eyes softened, and she placed her hand gently against her chest, then gestured toward him. Her meaning was clear. She wanted more than his body. She wanted his heart. The test of trust the forest was no longer silent. For weeks, Daniel had grown used to the rhythm of its sounds, birds calling, leaves whispering, strange creatures chittering in the night. But now, a new noise broke the peace. Engines, low, distant. Mechanical. Daniel froze where he stood, clutching the water gourd he had carved from fruit. His breath caught in his throat. He hadn't heard that sound since the crash. Another ship. His first instinct was hope. Rescue, he thought. Finally, rescue. But the thought died as quickly as it came, because rescue ships didn't sound like that. This wasn't the soft hum of human technology. This was deeper, harsher, filled with an edge that made his stomach turn. Predator's engines. That night, he told Shara, with gestures pointing to the sky, making the shape of a ship with his hands. She tilted her head, her glowing eyes thoughtful. Then her expression darkened. She spoke a word he had never heard before, her tone sharp, bitter. She repeated it, tapping the ground hard with her massive finger. Daniel understood enough. Whoever they were, she didn't trust them. And if she didn't trust them, neither could he. The next day, the sky burned. A ship descended through the clouds, its black hull glowing with fire as it broke atmosphere. Daniel and Shara watched from a ridge, hidden beneath the trees. The ship landed in a nearby clearing, sending waves of dust and smoke into the air. Figures emerged, tall, armored, carrying weapons that glowed faintly with energy. Their movements were sharp, military. Daniel's heart pounded. They weren't here for rescue. They were here to hunt. The soldiers spread out quickly, scanning the forest with strange devices. One of them pointed toward Daniel's camp. Daniel's stomach twisted. "They're tracking me," he whispered. Shara made a low growl in her throat, her massive hand clenching into a fist. She gestured for him to follow, leading him deeper. Into the woods, they moved quickly, but Daniel stumbled to keep pace. Her strides were long, powerful, while his legs ached from days of survival. She slowed when she noticed, crouching to shield him with her massive body as they moved through thick brush. The sound of engines grew closer. Drones swarmed overhead, scanning with beams of red light. One passed directly over them. Daniel held his breath. The red beams swept across Sheree's body, but did not reach him beneath her shadow. The drone paused, scanning, then moved on. Daniel exhaled Shakily. She had protected him. They reached a cave hidden by vines. Shara motioned for him to stay quiet, pushing him gently inside. Her glowing eyes met his, firm but soft, as if to say, "Trust me." Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to stay by her side, but his voice caught in his throat. He nodded instead. From the cave's mouth, he watched her move into the forest. She didn't hide. She didn't run. She stood tall, her silver hair gleaming in the alien light, her massive frame unshaken. Moments later, the soldiers arrived. Their weapons hummed as they pointed them at her. She roared, the sound shaking the ground, echoing through the trees. Daniel's heart pounded. They would kill her. They had the weapons. She couldn't fight them all, but then, to his shock, she didn't attack. She lowered her hands slowly, palms open, just as she always had done with him. A sign of peace. The soldiers did not understand. They shouted in their strange tongue, their weapons glowing brighter. Daniel gritted his teeth. His chest burned. They think she's a monster. They don't see what I see. The first shot rang out. Energy exploded against her shoulder, searing her flesh. Shara roared in pain, stumbling back. The forest lit with a flash of weapons as more fire followed. Daniel couldn't stay hidden any longer. He ran from the cave, shouting, "Stop! Stop!" His voice cracked, his words lost in the chaos, but he didn't care. He couldn't let them kill her. He stumbled into the clearing, placing himself between her and the soldiers. The nearest soldier froze, his weapon lowering slightly in surprise. Daniel's ragged clothes, his human face, it was clear he wasn't one of them. But another soldier shouted, raising his weapon again. Daniel spread his arms wide, his heart pounding. "No, she's not your enemy." They didn't understand his words, but they understood his actions. Behind him, Shara's massive form trembled, her glowing blood dripping from her wound. She made a soft sound, almost a plea. Daniel didn't move. His legs shook, but he stood his ground. "If you want her," he said, his voice breaking, "you'll have to go through me." The soldiers hesitated. Confusion flickered between them. Why would a human defend an alien giantess? Daniel didn't care what they thought. He only knew one truth. Shara had saved him, fed him, protected him. She wasn't a monster. She was his friend. Maybe more, and he would not let her die. Then something happened that none of them expected. Shara pushed herself up, despite her wound. Her glowing eyes locked on Daniel's back, her voice rising in a sound that shook the trees. Not a roar of anger, a call of unity. She stepped forward, towering over him, placing her massive hand gently behind him, as if shielding him with her presence. The soldiers stepped back. For the first time, doubt crossed their faces. This wasn't a human enslaved. This wasn't prey. This was a bond. The standoff held for what felt like forever. Then, the sound of engines roared again. The soldiers' devices beeped, signaling orders. Reluctantly, they began to retreat, their weapons still raised but no longer firing. They pulled back toward their ship, disappearing into the smoke. When the last soldier was gone, Daniel's knees gave out. He sank to the ground, his chest heaving. Shara lowered herself beside him, her massive hand trembling as she touched her wound. Her blood glowed faintly, dripping onto the dirt. Daniel turned to her, tears burning in his eyes. "You could have killed them, but you didn't." She made a sound, soft and tired, and pressed her finger gently against his chest. Her meaning was clear. She had chosen him over war. That night, they sat together in silence. Daniel tended to her wound with the little knowledge he had, wrapping it in cloth, cleaning it as best as he could. She didn't flinch, though every touch must have burned. When it was done, she leaned closer, her massive form curling protectively. Around him, her glowing eyes softened, and for the first time, Daniel didn't see a giantess. He saw Shara, and he knew. Without doubt, that trust had been tested, and it had survived.